The stakes rise in Browder-Gate. The EU threatens Cyprus with Article 7. It's been quite a week for Article 7 of the Lisbon Treaty of the EU. First Hungary and now Cyprus. And all because of some guy named Bill Browder? Despite numerous warnings and obstacles, Cyprus continues to assist Russia in investigating the finances of Bill Browder. This has resulted in letters of warning to Cypriot President Nikos Anastasiades, as well as lawsuits by Browder citing the investigation violates his human rights, like everything else in this world. Last fall, Browder and 17 members of the European Parliament, or MEPs, launched a two-pronged assault on Cyprus to end their assisting Russia's investigation into Browder. Browder with his lawsuit, the MEPs with a letter of warning. The lawsuit, however, has failed. The Nicosia District Court handed down a ruling recently which allowed for Browder to sue for damages to his reputation, but not putting an injunction on the investigation. Quote from the Cyprus Mail, "More than a month ago, the Nicosia District Court said that the cooperation with Russia in its politically motivated probe would violate the human rights of Bill Browder and his associate Ivan Cherkasov, and the two would have good prospects in claiming damages from the government. Still, the court rejected Browder's application for an order preventing Cypriot authorities from cooperating with Russia in its proceedings against him on the grounds that any damage would not be irreparable." And this is where things get interesting, because now, in light of this ruling, the stakes have been raised. 4 of those original 17 MEPs, many of whom were on the infamous Soros list as being in the pay of Open Society Foundation, sent a more serious letter of warning to Anastasiades, threatening Cyprus with censure via Article 7 of the Lisbon Treaty for not upholding the European Union standards on human rights. Now, this is a dangerous escalation in service of an investigation into someone who Russia has a legitimate interest in pursuing. Dismissing all of Russia's concerns about Browder as politically motivated is pure grandstanding. It carries no weight of law and stinks of a far deeper and more serious corruption. Because if Browder was as pure as the driven snow as he presents himself to the world, then he would have no issue whatsoever in Cyprus opening up his books to Russia and put the question of his guilt to rest once and for all. The ruling from the court stated that Cypriot officials are not barred from helping Russia to get to the bottom of Browder's web of offshore accounts, all of which, according to Russian lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya, run through Cyprus. From RT from last year. He, Browder, is afraid of the Russian probe that has conclusive evidence of his financial crimes and proof that his theory of Magnitsky's death is an absolute fake. That's why Browder is ready to stage any provocation, Veselnitskaya said. She went on to say that the investor's decision to intervene was particularly, quote, influenced by the fact that the entire network of offshore companies that make up his organized criminal group is located on this territory of Cyprus. The incident that Veselnitskaya was referring to took place in late October 2017. At that time, 17 members of the European Parliament appealed to Cypriot President Nikos Anastasiades in an open letter in which they called on him to stop assisting Russia in its investigation against Browder, unquote. Remember, Veselnitskaya was the woman who met with Donald Trump Jr. during the 2016 campaign. She was adamant she had information that was pertinent to them. The Mueller probe and the media tried to spin that meeting as her giving Trump access to Hillary's emails, but what she was actually trying to give them was the lowdown on Browder, the Magnitsky Act, and the whole rotten, sordid history of him, Edmund Safra of Republic National Bank, and the raping of Russia by them and others in the late 1990s. And to show Trump that the Magnitsky Act was built on a lie and the sanctions against Russia should be lifted because of this. And that is the whole point. Browder's story is fiction. Magnitsky was his accountant and not his lawyer, who knew all about his dealings and could convict Browder of a raft of crimes far greater than the ones Russia already has in absentia. Putin had no interest in having Magnitsky executed or beaten to death in prison. If anyone had an incentive to keep Magnitsky alive, it was Vladimir Putin. If anyone had an incentive to have Magnitsky killed, it was Browder. And so the whole story that Browder has woven, the myth around himself, is so insane that it bears repeating over and over. Browder's story is fiction. Because when you stop and put all the pieces together, you realize a number of things, and none of them are good. First, Browder was deeply enmeshed in the plot to frame Yeltsin for stealing $7 billion of IMF money, which created the conditions for bringing Putin to power. Second, he, Mikhail Khodorkovsky, and others have systematically lobbied Congress and the European Parliament to peddle this false story of the brave freedom fighter Magnitsky against the evil Putin to get revenge, in Khodorkovsky's case, on Putin for deposing him from power in Russia and stealing back the wealth Khodorkovsky stole during the Yeltsin years, namely Yukos. And for Browder, it was the culmination of years of work to destroy Russia from within and stay one step ahead of the hangman's noose. His 2015 book, Red Notice, is a work of near fiction as outlined by Alex Craner in his book, The Grand Deception, The Truth About Bill Browder, the Magnitsky Act, and Anti-Russia Sanctions. And the Magnitsky Act was the way everyone interested who could prove this was true could be silenced through sanctions. But it's even bigger than that, because this was policy. The Magnitsky Act is a linchpin of American and European foreign policy to destroy Russia and subjugate the world. It was enacted alongside other legislation to take back control of the political narrative of the world, rein in free speech on the internet by tying any activity not approved of by the, quote, Davos crowd to be subject to sanctions on the nebulous basis of human rights violations. The Magnitsky Act has weaponized virtue signaling, and in my mind, it was intentionally done to open up another path to protect the most vile and venal people in the world to arrogate power to themselves without consequence. Today, we stand on the brink of an open hot war between the United States and Russia because of the lies which have been stacked up on top of each other in service of this monstrous piece of legislation. With each day, it and its follow-up, last year's Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, or CATSA, are used as immense hammers to bring untold misery to millions of people around the world. People like Browder are nothing but petty thieves. It's obvious to me he started out as a willing pawn because he was young, hungry, and vaguely psychopathic. The deeper he got in it, the more erratic his behavior became. Browder is being protected by powerful people in the US and the EU, not because he's so important, but because exposing him exposes them. And this is why another country is being threatened with the stripping of what few rights sovereign nations have within the EU. Cyprus, over his books. Poland stood up for Hungary the other day over ideological reasons, sovereignty and immigration, but no one seems ready to stand up to the conspiracy surrounding Browder, Khodorkovsky, and the Magnitsky Act. And if someone in power finally does, it could change everything we think we know about geopolitics.